Imagine it is 12:15 p.m. on a Tuesday.
Right, just middle of the day.
Yeah, exactly. The
Yeah.
sun is out. You might be, stepping out of your office to grab a sandwich, or maybe you're walking your dog.
Just enjoying the hum of a completely ordinary midday.
Exactly. Cars are rolling through intersections. People are running those mundane, completely forgettable errands.
Yeah, the stuff you don't even think about twice.
Right. It's a time of day that we universally associate with the safe, predictable routines of daily life.
Oh, absolutely. It's the definition of routine.
And then in a fraction of a second, that ordinary American afternoon is just completely shattered.
Yeah.
A standard neighborhood intersection instantly transforms into this permanent landmark of tragedy.
It's jarring. The safety of the routine just vanishes.
It really does. And a community is left reeling, just completely upended by an act of violence that spills out into the open air.
The contrast there is staggering, honestly. The contrast between the complete normalcy of a Tuesday afternoon and the sudden, irreversible finality of that kind of violence.
Right, it's like a collision of two different worlds.
Exactly. It creates a massive psychological whiplash for everyone in the vicinity. I mean, you go from absolute routine to absolute chaos in the time it takes to blink.
That whiplash, and really the incredible enduring human resilience that follows it, is what we are focusing on today.
It's an important topic.
It really is.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a stack of sources, reports from local journalism, official police statements, and coroner confirmations.
All surrounding a really heartbreaking story out of Indianapolis from July 6, 2026.
Yeah. And usually we cover a really wide variety of topics on this show, diving into everything from historical anomalies to the mechanics of new technology.
We bounce around a lot, yeah.
We do. But today's deep dive requires a much more somber, respectful approach.
Definitely.
Because we are dealing with a tragic case of domestic violence and the sudden, devastating loss of a really vibrant community member.
It's a heavy one today. It is. We are putting aside the fast-paced news cycle just to acknowledge a life, to look at the facts of what happened and to deeply examine how a community responds to the unimaginable.
I'm ready when you are.
Okay, let's unpack this.
When we look through the documents in front of us, what we are really analyzing is the anatomy of a localized trauma.
Right. The anatomy of it.
Yeah, because we have the clinical procedural timeline of the event itself, right? The police response, the forensic identification, all the official statements.
The black and white facts.
Exactly. But running parallel to that, we have the emotional, human reality of who this happened to.
And the community that is left behind to absorb that initial shock.
Right. To truly comprehend a story like this, we have to synthesize both of those halves. I mean, we can't just read the police blotter.
No, of course not.
But we also can't fully appreciate the community's grief without understanding the stark reality of the timeline itself.
Well, let's start with that timeline then, because our sources paint a very specific, devastating picture of the official sequence of events.
They do.
So the date is July 6th, 2026. The time is right around 12:01 p.m.
Broad daylight.
Broad daylight. And the location is Indianapolis, specifically right near the intersection of East 13th Street and North Gladstone Avenue.
Right.
The Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, the IMPD, they responded to reports of a shooting at that location.
What's fascinating here is, and I use that word carefully, referring strictly to the procedural mechanics of these events, how law enforcement must operate in that exact shattered reality you described a moment ago.
Oh, right, because they're walking into the chaos.
Exactly. The IMPD officers arriving at East 13th and North Gladstone are not walking into a neat, easily understandable situation.
No, I can't even imagine.
They are walking into shock, trauma, and this chaotic flood of preliminary information.
People yelling, sirens going off.
Right. They have to very quickly piece together these fragmented reports from neighbors or from witnesses who might have literally just been driving by.
Wow, yeah. Just to establish the grim reality of what has just occurred.
Right. They have to anchor the situation immediately.
Which, according to the preliminary investigations in our sources, was a murder-suicide.
Yeah.
The parties involved were 35-year-old Doris Jean Davis, who was the victim, and 33-year-old Maurice Lacy, the perpetrator.
And the sources note that, drawing on accounts from friends, they identified Lacy as Davis's ex-boyfriend, her ex-partner.
Right. The initial investigation indicated that he shot Davis before taking his own life.
It's just an awful, awful situation.
It really is. But jumping back to the mechanics of that IMPD response for a second, how exactly does a police department confirm a narrative like a domestic violence, murder, suicide so quickly at an active scene?
It's a really good question.
I mean, 12:15 p.m., broad daylight. It's chaotic, like you said.
Mm.
How do they separate the actual facts from the sheer panic of the moment?
Well, that requires an immediate dual-track assessment by the responding officers.
Okay, dual track meaning what?
Meaning the absolute first priority is always threat neutralization and containment.
So making sure nobody else gets hurt.
Exactly. When calls for shots fired come in, the initial assumption must always be that there is an active, ongoing threat to the public.
Right. They don't know who's doing the shooting when they pull up.
Right. However, once officers secure the immediate vicinity and determine that the shooter is down, in this case, deceased from an apparent self-inflicted wound, the gears shift entirely.
So they go from a tactical response to an investigative reconstruction.
Yes. From playing defense to playing historian, essentially. They're trying to figure out what happened in the 5 minutes before they got there.
That is a highly accurate way to frame it. Playing historian.
Yeah, they are looking for context cues. They isolate witnesses right away. Like, did anyone hear an argument? Did anyone see the interaction prior to the shots?
And I imagine the physical evidence at the scene plays a huge part immediately.
Oh, huge. In this specific case, the physical evidence at the scene, the proximity of the individuals, the nature of the wounds, the weapon placement, it all begins to tell a forensic story.
While they are doing that, are they also checking IDs?
Simultaneously, yes. Officers are likely running license plates of vehicles parked at the scene, checking any identification found on the individuals, and running those names through their databases.
Ah, okay. So if there is a documented history there.
Right. Or if witnesses at the scene can immediately identify the relationship between the two individuals, which our sources indicate friends were able to do here.
Wow, so friends were right there.
Yeah. And that context rapidly crystallizes the preliminary narrative. It moves the event in the public safety matrix from an unknown active shooter to a contained domestic tragedy.
Establishing that narrative seems so crucial for the neighborhood's immediate psychological state, too.
Absolutely. The uncertainty is terrifying.
Right. Before that moment, East 13th Street and North Gladstone Avenue was just a standard geographic location. It was just asphalt and stop signs.
A completely neutral space.
Exactly. But the moment those shots are fired, it becomes a tragic landmark.
It changes the geography entirely.
It does. I keep thinking about the people living in those houses right near that corner.
Yeah.
Every time they look out their front window or drive through that intersection on the way to the grocery store, the physical space itself is going to hold the memory of that Tuesday afternoon.
The spatial memory of a neighborhood is incredibly powerful, and it is just profoundly altered by sudden violence.
Because it's suddenly right there on their doorstep.
Right. We so often think of domestic violence as this insidious, hidden danger, something that occurs behind closed doors in deeply private, isolated spaces.
Which it often is.
It is. But when it spills out into the public sphere at a busy intersection in the middle of the day, it forces the entire surrounding community to confront it without any filter.
Yeah, it completely shatters the illusion that these private tragedies don't affect the broader public.
It really does.
It's almost like dropping a massive stone into a very small pond.
That's a great analogy.
Right. The splash is the incident itself, but the ripples, that blast radius, it hits the neighbors who just happen to be looking out their window.
Yeah, the delivery driver turning down the street.
The people walking their dogs. It is a shared trauma now.
And that blast radius fundamentally rewrites the geography of the community. A corner that used to mean turn left for the park now means the place where the tragedy happened.
Wow. Yeah, it completely overrides the normal associations.
It does. It takes a tremendous amount of time and conscious community effort to reclaim that space.
I can imagine.
But in those initial hours, the community is simply trapped in the void left by that sudden impact.
Because they don't have all the information yet.
Exactly. They know something terrible has occurred, they have heard the sirens, they have seen the police tape, but they do not have the complete factual picture.
Which pushes us into how a community actually gets those facts.
Right.
Once the sirens fade and the police tape goes up, the neighborhood has to rely on local institutions and journalists to make sense of the void.
They do.
And looking at the timeline in our sources, there is a distinct gap that I want to explore with you.
Sure. Let's look at it.
So the incident happens on July 6 at 12:15 p.m. But the Marion County Coroner's Office didn't officially confirm the identities of the two individuals until the following day, July 7, 2026,
Right, the next day.
That is essentially a 24-hour waiting period.
It is.
If this happens in broad daylight, and as you mentioned, friends or witnesses might already be at the scene, identifying the individuals to the police, why does the coroner take a full day to release the names?
Well, it comes down to the immense difference between a visual identification at a chaotic scene and a legal forensic identification.
Okay, so the legal weight of it is different.
Massively different. The Marion County Coroner's Office carries this huge procedural weight. They cannot operate on assumption.
Not even preliminary police notes.
Not even that, or even the immediate statements of friends who might have been present at the scene. They must deal in absolute, unshakable certainty.
Are you saying that even if a close friend says that is Doris Jean Davis, the coroner still has to run a completely independent verification process?
They absolutely must.
Wait, really? Even if it's obvious to the people there?
Yes, because visual identification, particularly in the immediate aftermath of a violent trauma, is notoriously unreliable from a forensic standpoint.
Oh, I guess I hadn't thought about the trauma aspect of it.
Yeah, the human brain, under extreme stress, can really struggle to process traumatic visual information accurately.
Wow.
Therefore, the coroner relies on scientific methodologies, dental records, fingerprint analysis, or in some cases, DNA comparison.
Just to establish the legal identity.
Correct. Furthermore, they are mandated to complete a thorough physical examination to legally determine the cause and manner of death.
Right. They have to be absolutely sure.
This is not just for public record. It is the foundational step for any potential legal proceedings, insurance claims, and the formal issuance of a death certificate.
Okay, that makes total sense from a procedural standpoint. But emotionally, that 24-hour void must be absolute agony for the community.
Oh, it's unbearable.
You have people who might suspect their loved one was involved because, I don't know, maybe they aren't answering their phone, or they recognized a car on the news.
Yeah.
But they haven't received official word. And during that entire waiting period, the public is leaning entirely on local media to navigate the silence.
Which brings us to the role of local journalism in processing community trauma.
Right. And the primary news coverage of this tragedy came from WTHR 13 News in Indianapolis.
Correct.
The sources emphasized that they were the primary provider of ongoing updates as the investigation unfolded.
And importantly, their reporting was sourced directly from official police briefings from the IMPD and statements from the victims' loved ones.
But here's my question. In 2026, literally everyone has a smartphone.
Yes, they do.
If neighbors are posting videos, photos of the scene, and rumors on social media instantly, doesn't WTHR's decision to wait for official police briefings and that coroner's DeLung report actually leave the community vulnerable to misinformation?
How do you mean?
Like, if the news station is waiting 24 hours to name names, but Twitter or local Facebook groups are naming them in 20 minutes, aren't the journalists just falling behind the reality of the situation?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of information mechanics, it is precisely because social media moves so fast and so recklessly that local journalism must anchor itself to institutions.
Oh, so they have to be the anchor.
Exactly. You are describing a very real tension in modern crisis reporting here. A rumor on social media can travel across a city in minutes.
Yeah, we see it all the time.
And often, in situations of chaos, those rumors are disastrously wrong.
Right.
They can misidentify victims, they can misidentify perpetrators, or invent entirely fabricated motives out of thin air.
So the journalist's job isn't necessarily to be the first one to say a name.
No.
It's to be the one who builds the factual scaffolding the community can actually trust.
Yes. WTHR essentially acts as a filtering mechanism.
Filtering out the noise.
By relying strictly on the IMPD for the timeline and the Marion County coroner for the legal identification, they are prioritizing structural reality over speed.
Which is so important when a community is experiencing acute trauma.
Instability is their biggest enemy right then. If a news organization publishes a preliminary name based on a neighborhood rumor and it turns out to be wrong,
Oh, man.
they have just inflicted massive, unnecessary trauma on a completely uninvolved family.
While simultaneously degrading the public's trust in their reporting.
Exactly. The clinical facts, verified by institutions, they provide a necessary, stable foundation.
Right.
That foundation is what allows a community to transition from raw panic and rampant speculation into a state of collective processing and mourning.
They are curating the blotter so the public doesn't have to wade through the chaos.
Beautifully said.
And what is so vital about WTHR's coverage here, based on our sources, is that they didn't just stop at the sterile police facts.
No, they didn't.
Once those institutional facts were established, they made sure to include statements from loved ones. They actively moved the narrative from being solely about a crime to being about a person.
That transition in the reporting is the pivot point. It's where a story stops being a statistic and becomes a human legacy.
Well, let's follow that pivot, because this brings us to the absolute core of today's deep dive.
The most important part.
Moving away from the clinical reality of the IMPD investigation, the forensic timeline, and the initial news bulletins, we really have to look at the human elements.
Yes.
We need to talk about who was actually lost on July 6th and how the Indianapolis community chose to respond to that profound void.
Right.
According to the loved ones who spoke out, 35-year-old Doris Jean Davis was affectionately known to her friends, family, and co-workers simply as DJ.
And just the presence of a nickname like DJ in these reports immediately signals a deep level of integration within a community.
Right, because not everyone gets a nickname like that.
Exactly. A nickname is a shorthand for intimacy. It signifies that she wasn't just a resident of a city. You know, she was a known, active participant in the lives of the people around her.
It reflects familiarity, endearment, and a shared history.
It really does.
The sources outline that in the days following her tragic death, a public memorial service was held at Windsor Village Park.
Yes.
And this gathering brought together all the different intersecting facets of DJ's life. It wasn't just like a small private family affair.
No, it was much broader.
It included her friends, her family members, and her co-workers.
Everyone she touched.
Yeah. And what really stands out in the coverage, what WTHR highlighted and what her loved ones insisted on emphasizing, was that DJ was remembered not by the tragedy of her final moments, but by the overwhelming force of her character.
The community made a highly conscious, deliberate choice regarding how her narrative would be framed moving forward.
Here's where it gets really interesting and honestly profoundly moving.
Yeah, I agree.
When you read the community's sentiment, the specific words they used to describe DJ were bold, vibrant, and deeply loved.
Powerful words.
They emphasized that her loss left a massive impact on them. But I just want to sit with those adjectives for a minute. Bold, vibrant.
They paint such a vivid picture.
Think about the contrast between those words and the language we were just talking about in the first half of this deep dive.
Right, the institutional language.
Yeah. When you read a police report or a coroner's statement, the language is entirely sterile by design.
It has to be.
It's 35-year-old victim incident intersection.
Very clinical.
But bold and vibrant paints a totally different picture. It paints a picture of a woman who took up space in the best possible way.
Someone who was truly alive.
Someone who lived out loud, who brought energy and color into the daily routines of her friends and coworkers.
Think about what an act of violence actually does, mechanically speaking.
Okay.
It is a sudden, brutal attempt to silence someone. It is an act of removal, an attempt to wipe a person out of the picture entirely.
Right. It's erasure.
Yes, erasure. And when a community experiences that kind of forced removal, and they respond by standing up in a public park and shouting about how incredibly vibrant and bold that person was,
Wow.
they are actively fighting back against that silence.
They are refusing to let it happen.
They are refusing to let the sterile, violent end dictate the sum total of her existence. They are insisting that her energy, her personality, and her presence are the defining elements of her story.
It feels like a very defiant kind of love.
That's exactly what it is.
It's a community gathering together and effectively saying, you do not get to dictate how we remember her. You do not get to take her brightness away from us.
It's incredibly powerful.
And the location they chose to do this, Windsor Village Park, feels incredibly significant to that defiance.
Oh, absolutely.
They didn't just retreat to a private home, right? They held a very public memorial service.
This raises an important question about the sociology of public spaces, much like we discussed the spatial memory of the intersection where the tragedy occurred.
Right, how the space changes.
Exactly. So why choose a park? Windsor Village Park is, by its very nature, a communal environment.
It belongs to everybody.
It is an open, shared territory associated with recreation, with children, with community events, with life aggressively carrying on.
It's the exact opposite of an isolated, closed-door environment.
Precisely. And the significance of choosing a public space for this specific healing process really cannot be overstated.
Why is that?
Well, domestic violence, by its nature, thrives in isolation.
Oh, right. It wants to hide.
It relies on keeping people separated, on hiding the truth from coworkers and extended family.
Keeping it in the shadows.
So by gathering physically in an open, sunlit public park, bringing together all these distinct spheres of DJ's life, the community is breaking down that isolation.
That is so poignant.
You have her family, who have known her since childhood, standing next to her friends who knew her socially, and they are standing next to her coworkers who saw her at 9:00 a.m. every single weekday.
That physical intermingling has to be so crucial for processing something this sudden.
It's essential.
I keep thinking about those coworkers,
Okay.
We spend so much of our lives at our jobs.
Sometimes more time than we spend with our families.
Right. You know your coworkers' coffee orders, you know their weekend plans, you know their moods.
You know the rhythm of their day.
Yeah. To have someone so vibrant just suddenly violently gone on a Tuesday afternoon, that workplace must have been completely paralyzed.
I can't even fathom the shock.
But seeing her family at the park, hearing stories from her childhood, sharing their own stories of how bold she was in the office, it forces all those different parts of her life to intersect.
It does.
Everyone realizes they're holding a different piece of the same puzzle.
And it creates a physical, tangible manifestation of her impact on the world.
Yeah.
When a person is grieving in isolation, the loss can feel insurmountable. The world can feel entirely empty.
Because it's just you and the grief.
Right. But when you are standing in a public park, surrounded by dozens or perhaps hundreds of other people who are there for the exact same reason,
It changes everything.
it immediately validates the profound scale of the house. It proves to you, visually and emotionally, that you are not alone in your grief.
The sheer volume of people gathering is proof of her vibrancy.
Yes. The act of gathering is an act of collective resilience. It is the community actively weaving itself back together after experiencing a violent, sudden tear.
I love that image. It's like they are actively knitting the neighborhood's safety net back together, thread by thread, story by story.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
And it really highlights the broader implications of this kind of violence. It was never, ever just a private tragedy.
No, it never is.
The blast radius we talked about earlier, it doesn't just hit the neighbors on East 13th Street. It hits the family, it hits the social circles, it hits the entire workplace.
It touches so many lives.
The memorial at Windsor Village Park was the community fully acknowledging the true size of that blast radius and making a collective decision to fill that massive space with shared love and remembrance, rather than just retreating into fear and sorrow.
It is the ultimate counterbalance to the timeline of July 6th.
It really is.
The clinical facts tell us exactly how she died, down to the minute and the geographic coordinate. But the community gathering in that park tells us how she lived.
And structurally, psychologically, the latter is what must endure for a community to heal.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to the most important takeaway for you, listening to this deep dive today.
Right.
We have examined the procedural reports, we've broken down the forensic timeline, we've looked at the mechanics of the journalism, and we've explored the community's profound response.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. And yes, the stark facts of July 6, 2026 outline a deeply heartbreaking, senseless case of domestic violence in Indianapolis.
They outline a loss that simply never should have happened.
But the true lasting legacy of this story does not belong to the violence, and it does not belong to the perpetrator.
No, it does not.
The true legacy belongs entirely to Doris Jean Davis, and it belongs to the immense, defiant love her community showed her at Windsor Village Park.
It is a reminder that a life is measured by the connections it creates, the spaces it brightens, and the people it brings together.
Not by the circumstances of its end.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean?
That's the big question.
It means that the next time we are scrolling on our phones and we see one of those brief, terrible headlines about an incident in a city, we have a responsibility as consumers of information to pause.
You have to stop and think.
We have to remember the vibrancy of the lives hidden behind those sterile reports. We have to remember that behind every police briefing and every coroner's timeline, there's a DJ.
Someone bold.
Someone deeply loved. Someone whose sudden absence leaves a profound, echoing void across a massive web of family, friends, and coworkers.
We cannot allow the violence to be the only thing we absorb.
We really can't.
And that leaves us with a final, perhaps lingering thought to really mull over as we close out this deep dive.
What's that?
When a community experiences a sudden, dark tragedy like this one, how does the memory of a bold and vibrant life ultimately serve as an enduring light?
Hmm.
Does the physical way a community chooses to gather, standing shoulder to shoulder in a public place like Windsor Village Park, deliberately blending the different spheres of a person's life into one shared space of open remembrance, does that specific act of gathering dictate how that person's legacy will survive and shape the community in the years to come?